My wife just said to me, why not just get your own property there and have people who stay there rather than you're booking them into Premier Inn. And from there, I started, because I don't live in Manchester, started looking for partnership, and then Victoria came into it because Victoria and myself finished from the same medical school. I finished some years ahead of her, and then got to know Bobby. So essentially, we started that. It was basically first for Nigerians, and then it expanded, and up to date now, it's now for any doctor coming to the UK. So our houses are quite numerous, and we have separated these houses into plab houses and non-plab houses. The plab houses are straightforward. People here for plab, they come over, they stay there. All the houses have mannequins, and you can practice. Practice makes perfect, they say, and the success rates because of this regular use of mannequins 24/7, ophthalmoscope, um, we've got the phlebotomy set, we've got the general examination, and horoscope are also available in every house. So a lot of people tell us, okay, that's been helped them to pass. The non-plab accommodations are for professionals who are living in the UK. Sometimes some of the plab doctors come back to locum in Manchester, and they also stay in the plab houses or the non-plab houses, depending on them. And also, sometimes some people come, majorly nurses from Nigeria, they need a place to stay before getting the permanent accommodation. And this really helps because the landlords in the UK do not want to rent to somebody coming from abroad because they don't know your financial status. So we take them in for 4 weeks, 2 to 8 weeks. And by the time they're leaving, we write a letter to the landlord to stand like a guarantor to say, these people have stayed with us, they pay their rent regularly, no antisocial behavior. And that's really helped a lot of people to find their footing because sometimes some people just need a place to stay whilst looking for their houses. So that's about the accommodation. Our plab accommodations are strategically located close to Samson Academy and Key Point Academy. So if you're going to any of these two, then any of the houses will be good for you. If you're in doubt, just email us at balosega@yahoo.com. We have another branch of BaloSegha which came about because we found that following PLAB exam, there's always this problem of CV review, audits, how to go about interview practices. So we started the BaloSegha education, and this particular presentation is also part of the BaloSegha education. We do audit courses, CV reviews, and also we've got courses on medical legal because at some point in time, we noticed a lot of Nigerians were getting into disciplinary issues. So we invited a lawyer to come and talk. And all these courses we've done can actually be viewed on our BaloSegha channel on YouTube. So you can also check us in that. We are very active on social media, especially YouTube and Instagram. You can follow us to have a track of what we've done in the past. To aid your visa application, BaloSegha's letter to the embassy is acknowledged. So if you book accommodation with us, we write the standard way the embassy wants us to write it. We write to say, you're coming to us, we will be responsible for you whilst you're in the UK. And the success rate, I wouldn't say it's 100%, but success rate is above 95. Most people have gotten their visas with that kind of letter. We further introduced mentorship because over time we noticed that somebody needs to hold you in this struggle in the UK. So there's a saying that says, if I've seen so far, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. I remember when I started in the UK, some people just made life easier for me. So why can't I also do the same? So I would say in the last 2 weeks, we've been able, the directors, myself being a consultant, Victoria also being a consultant in the UK, been able to use our network of friends to get clinical attachment for people. You know, if we want to make connections for people, we have to also be sure of the character of these people we're um, presenting to our colleagues so that we also stand in good light. So we use our connection to mentor people and to get clinical attachment. I wouldn't say much more, but I would say if you are active on any social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Thread, whichever one, just search for BaloSegha and you surely will find us there. We are very open to criticism. We are very open to ideas. If you have any, if you have my number, you can contact me or email balosega@yahoo.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that in-depth about BaloSegha. So beautiful. Once again, thank you all for joining. I see a couple of names that I know, so we're happy that you're joining and we're happy that you're here. We don't want to waste time at all. It is not a time to talk. BaloSegha is not known to talk, and everything. So today's topic is thriving in the NHS, and it's the speaker is someone who she's currently in a training, internal medicine training. She will talk more about herself before she starts, and she is currently based in Dundee, Scotland. So for those who plan to go for holidays next summer in Dundee, just let her know. Make sure that when you are paying, you pay to us first. Just joking, sorry. So she is currently in a training for as an internal medicine in Dundee, and she's written a book as well, which she will let us know about that. So I'd like to invite Funke Pegba to, well, popularly known as Funke, Pegba Otemolu, to take over from here and dish out everything. We will appreciate after the discourse presentation, whatever questions you have, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat room. We will obviously, yeah, we can't take everybody voicing over and everything, not because we don't want to hear your lovely voices, but because it might be cumbersome. So just send questions via the chat box. We'll be more than happy to answer that afterwards. So thank you very much, and over to you, Funke.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor for me to be the last speaker for 2023, and I'm glad to be here this evening. So my topic is thriving in the NHS, and I've subtitled it as intentional living as an international medical graduate in the UK. I always start with my story. How did I get to be here and talking about this? And it's a very simple story, which I find interesting. I had been here in the UK as a master's student. I'd lived in London. I'd visited a few times because my family lived here at different points in time. I had most of my growing up life, like the average colonized person from a colonized country. I'd watched media from the UK. I spoke English very fluently. I never imagined that I would have a problem coming to work here. So I didn't take the approach that people had taken, where you prepare for your arrival here, you read blogs and things like that. I had done my PLAB when I was doing my master's, so it wasn't a synchronous journey of PLAB then work. It was PLAB, GMC license, 3 or 4 years doing other things, and then okay, let me see about working in the UK and training as a surgeon in the UK. So I'll just like to correct a part of the introduction because this will contribute to the story. I'm a general surgery trainee. So that's what I'm doing. I'm in higher surgical training at the moment, not internal medicine. Not because there's anything wrong with internal medicine, just for for the sake of facts. So I came here thinking I would get straight into surgical training because why wouldn't I? I was in training in Nigeria and Ibobi in Lagos. So I thought it would be very straightforward. I did read about that. I read that I needed the MRCS, I needed to apply for national selection. I had read several person specifications, but I didn't really understand what they meant. So the first culture shock was just the realization that I wasn't coping in the way I had thought I would. That was the first thing that happened. And then the next thing that happened was the fact that I didn't pass the exam. So I found myself struggling socially, psychologically, emotionally. It didn't add or make it easier that I was pregnant when I relocated and it was winter. So it was a lot of things going on at the same time. And then I moved jobs very shortly. I didn't stay, I think I stayed just under a year in my first job before I moved jobs. And by the time my friends were coming, I realized that there was a system, there was a pattern to this thing. There were things that they could do differently from what I did, and they would be more successful at settling in. And I saw that success repeat itself with a few of my friends. And then I realized I had something and I was able to give something. The way I was able to guide them when they came was different from the way my friends had guided me. And so they had an easier transition. So I thought I could do that for other people as well. So I started blogging. And then when that kind of became something else, it became a book. So I put the things I had blogged about into a book because it was, if you have this manual when you start, then you'll find that that whole struggle at the beginning story will be different. You'll still need time to adjust, but it won't be as bad as when it all comes as a shock. So that's my backstory. And then we'll get into sharing what my thoughts are about thriving in the UK as an international medical graduate. So my first thing that I have some slides that I'm trying to share unsuccessfully just now. I'm going to try one last time. And then if that doesn't work, we have a backup plan. So we'll go with our backup plan if sharing doesn't work.
Sure.
Okay. You can't see the screen yet. Can you?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. I think we need our backup plan.
Okay, let me try and get it done from this end.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I can see your screen. It might make it a bit tricky, but we'll make it work.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
And can you see the slides? Not yet. Hold on.
There's a third backup plan we didn't talk about. So we can, if I carry on from here, don't worry about the original backup plan. And I think we'll be fine from here. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll be okay. Because I just need them to.
Do I try sharing again?
No, don't worry about it.
Okay.
We're fine.
I'll wait till you give me the go ahead.
Yeah. So there's some, I'll talk. I can see the slides. It's more about what we want to share together. So there's some key areas that I'll talk about, and then at the end of it, I'll also talk about some things that I think are important struggles for international medical graduates. So I don't know if there's a way to chat answers. What do people think generally? Do people think that training is the only way to achieve their goals, generally speaking? So just type your answers and we'll see what comes up. Is training the only way, or is training the best way? Let's put it like that. So it's kind of like an unofficial poll. Just say what you think. One of the many ways. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yes. So training, someone thinks training is the only way or the best way. Okay. All right. So when you think about it, the thing to understand about the system, so the quickest. So the consensus and the feel is generally the same. There are many ways, but probably this is the quickest, this is the best. And because the system is different from the US and has similarities with other places where we're from, the way to think about it is not the quickest, the best, the easiest, but what do I want, right? What stage am I at in my life? What's my family situation? Which of the options will work best for me in the long run? If you ask yourself those questions when you approach the choices, then you'll make an informed decision. and that decision will serve you best when it comes to thinking about your life. So, for example, say you're married, you've got small children, and you don't want to be moved around a lot. Then the Caesar or portfolio pathway, which is the new name it's going to take, might be what's best for you because you get to be employed in one place. But then if you decide on that pathway and the one place you get employed at is not able to deliver what you need, because and then if you decide on that pathway, before you make that decision, you also need to know what the GMC expects. So in 3, 4, 5 years, when I'm actually applying for this, what do I need to present? So that when you're in a job, you're looking at that place and you're thinking, is this a place where I can achieve those things if I make the decision to go the portfolio pathway? If you're considering something like GP training and you're thinking about moving around and things like that, GP training is 3 years. So on average, you can afford to be inconvenienced for 3 years to get what you want. If you're thinking about something that takes 8 years, so say you're going from core training through to ST8, then it becomes a bit more unpleasant if you have to move around throughout that period. So again, think about yourself, your situation, and what's best for you. Think about where you are in your career pathway. So are you thinking CT1, CT2? Is that the stage you're at? Are you someone who's already a consultant where you were before? So say you're a consultant from your country and you've just come, then what you need is a place where you'll be supported to be able to get whatever exam you need from the fellowship in order to apply to be on the specialist register. So in that case, you're needing a few years in a supportive place with people that can tell you the things you need. So the stage you are at your career, the situation with your family, your goals and your aspirations, those are the things that you should feed into your decision making. So it's not about people telling you, you just need to go into training. If you go into training, everything is easy, or don't even bother with training, just do portfolio pathway. It's not about consensus or about what seems to be best. It's about yourself, your personal situation, what you want. And these are things that you need to, we've got the slides up, thank you. These are things that you need to think about when you're making the decisions and how you're going to progress from where you are. The next thing I would like to talk about is the endpoints. So where are you going to end up when you've done this training or you've gone through all of this, you're on the specialist register? You're either going to be a consultant if you're in clinical practice, or you're going to be a senior associate specialist, or think about that as well. So if you know that your ultimate goal is to be a senior associate specialist, you don't want to hold a consultant position, then it may mean that the amount of effort you need to put in is different than someone who wants to be a consultant. These things are all things that we don't think about at the beginning typically because there's a bandwagon type of effect that happens in the way people speak about these things. But we need to become more aware of what the options available are. If you're doing a GP training post, start speaking with people. Do you want to be a salaried GP, a GP partner, a locum GP? What do these options mean? So before you, because now, especially now that the opportunities to train are open from where you come from. So in the past, it used to be almost impossible to get into a training job. In fact, it was impossible because you had to pass the resident labor market test. So it was impossible to come from outside the country into a training job. And then with the changes around immigration policy, it then became possible. So the thing to think about is as you're getting that GP job from, for example, Nigeria, and you're going to be in it for 3 years, which means in your first year, you're already just trying to keep afloat and find your footing in the NHS. And then your year 2, your year 3, and then GP training is done. What happens then? What is your plan? Have conversations early to understand the system, understand where you want to go with things. The leadership roles in the trusts are really important because whether you work as a trust grade or whether you work in training you'll always need to demonstrate that you're a leader. Depending on your level of seniority, you might be able to work as an educational supervisor. There are roles for staff governors, which tend to be advertised in the trust. Sometimes they'll just put out roles that are available for people to take on leadership opportunities in the trust. If there's a medical school attached to your trust, find out what you can do within the medical school, because that will also support, and it's something you can use for your portfolio if you're going to apply for training and things like that. If you lead on audit projects, then make sure that you're getting letters to say that you led on those projects, and you can use that as evidence for your portfolio, whether you're preparing your portfolio for application for CSER, you're preparing your portfolio for application for a training job, or whether it's just your portfolio for your annual appraisal. So those are some of the things to think about when you're in that situation. The key takeaway from all of this is to think you need to make decisions early and understand why it's important to have the conversations earlier, so that you know what to expect from every stage and everything that you're doing. You know the pros and cons of each choice that you're making. You understand the financial implication of the decisions you take. So say, for example, you're the medical registrar in a hospital and you decide to go into GP training. Depending on how long you've been the medical registrar, that can directly impact your finances if you take the GP training. So do you want to do the job for long enough that when you enter the GP training, your salary is protected? Can you plan that? So instead of just doing it randomly, like, oh, it's now time, I want to be in training. Can you plan? Because there's a duration of time where you work as a middle grade that your pay becomes protected when you go into training. So can you make sure that you are timing all of these things, you're asking people questions, and you're making sure when you get to that job, that training job, you're saying, actually, according to this, and this is the salary, minimum salary I should earn. I shouldn't drop lower than where I was before. These are things that we tend to not be very aware of. And you see people just making decisions about training and you're not sure what's guiding the decision making. So we need to be aware of these things when we're making decisions. And those are the key takeaways, I think, from my point of view, when you think about your options and how you would like to plan your career. Because my hope with a lot of the work that we're all doing to support IMGs is that we start to see situations where we're all making very informed choices that are meaning that our lives are reflecting our values and what we would like to achieve. The next thing I would like to talk about is mentoring. I think that's the most, like, if I could pick one thing, most important thing that every international medical graduate should have, it's a mentor. And if you don't have a mentor, I tell people all the time, it's very easy to find a mentor. You just approach the person and you say very politely, hello, how are you? And this can be electronically, physically, and just say, hello, I really like what you do. I like what you've been able to accomplish. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions just to guide me? And sometimes that's you going out of your way to seek mentors. Sometimes people look at you and they see your commitment and then they offer to support you. And what that does for you is it provides guidance so that you have the future that you want. And then you start to make more informed decisions. And the thing you do is when you've been mentored, you must lift other people. So as you're going up that career ladder, you have to lift people as you climb. Stay in touch with your mentors. When you've been successful, let them know. Because a lot of the time, people help you and they don't know that what they did changed anything for you. But if you let them know, then that lets them know that they can support other people in that way. And also it just makes them happy. So do give them that courtesy of saying, I was successful, your support meant this to me. And sometimes they'll tell you, I don't think I did that much, but you know what the impact was of them speaking to you like that. If when you're thinking about, once you've thought about mentoring, the other thing that you start to think about is your social life in the UK. Earlier on in this year, on Nigerian social media, there was a lot of talk about the impact of leaving the country, the social impact of leaving the country. We don't talk about that. We don't think about that. What's the impact? So you're living in your home country, you live around your parents, your friends, a community, religious community that you've been part of for a long time. And even if you're not very nested in communities, when you go out, the way you interact with people is different. It's relaxed. There's no tension. You're not worried about what you'll say. You're not worried that you'll create problems for yourself in an interaction. You're free. All of a sudden, you're in this environment where sometimes you even say hello to people and they ignore you. People you've worked with, you go past the corridor, you're trying to say hello, they look up to the ceiling and they are wondering why it would be so hard to say hello. You can't follow the conversations. Very recent, I've been here for 7 years now, and very recently I was in a conversation with two other colleagues, and they were trying to carry me along in this conversation, and it was kind of like office gossip, that sort of thing. But the slangs they were using, I could not understand what they were saying. Like, I literally had to Google, like, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? Just so next time, at least I can be more convincing in engaging with the conversation, because I didn't understand. And these are real problems and challenges that we face. So how do you mitigate this? Keep trying, don't give up. Those social conversations, how was your weekend? Any plans for the weekend? For people who don't make plans for every weekend, it can be very challenging, because every weekend they're like, nothing, nothing, nothing. But over time, just keep at it. If someone tells you their weekend plans, when you see them the next week, ask them how the plans went. It's nice that you remember, and those things mean that you start to establish rapport with your colleagues, and that rapport you have with them then becomes what you can leverage. So you want to do an audit project with someone, it's going to be someone that you've had a friendly discussion with. It's not going to be someone you've never spoken. It's not going to be someone you've never had a discussion with, and that you'll walk up to and say, oh, I want to do an audit with you. It's going to be someone that you've had coffee with. So things like when it's time for lunch, asking your colleagues who are around, like, oh, would you like to go to lunch at the same time, if it's possible, on the ward, planning like coffee breaks. Okay, we'll meet up during our breaks. If there's a work event like drinks after work, even if you don't drink alcohol and it's not against your moral values, you can go to pubs with people. You can try to integrate a bit more. For some people who are extroverts, these things come easy. For people who are introverts, who are sensitive to these kinds of situations, it's more difficult. So you need to make the effort, because when you don't make the effort, then you are alone. You're isolated. So the conversations where you'll find out about courses, you'll find out what people are doing, you'll find out how people feel about things, you miss out on all of that, because all you're doing is, depending on your level, your discharge summaries, or all you're doing is you're going to work, doing your clinics and things. It was a discussion with one of my colleagues when I found out that I was being put in too many clinics. It was my first middle grade job, so I didn't realize that there was a limit to the number of clinics and my theater sessions, my SPA. Was this discussions, when you go, you sit down, you have tea together, that's when you learn. So it's really important to have these conversations, and then to know boundaries. In some cultures, it's okay to hug people and just say hello, physical contact. In some cultures, it's completely not okay. But if you're not in those situations often enough, then you miss out on all of that. Keep, as much as possible, find a community online to join, whether that's a country community or one like BaloSegha or something else. Find your own community, people that understand what you're going through, people that can relate to what you're saying, people who can support the transition, and even beyond the transition, after you feel comfortable, you're still always learning. So it's nice to be in a cocoon of support where you can say, this is what has happened. Can I get some support? Or I just want to get this off my chest. Those kinds of conversations. So that wraps up social life from my point of view and my experience without going too much into examples. The next thing to think about is our study goals. When you relocate, in order to progress, you have to study one way or another. So if you don't have any exams to do, then you have to know the guidelines so that you can keep abreast of your practice and what you're expected to do. Get involved with research, build your knowledge, because confidence really, really comes from knowledge. When you know the subject matter, when you know the management, the next steps to do, you become very confident. Time, you need to create time to study. It's difficult to do, especially with so much, we're adults now, there's so many things pulling you in several directions. So it's really important to plan the time so that you make sure that you're constantly improving yourself. On social media, follow organizations that are relevant to what you're doing. So on Twitter, I follow like the Royal Colleges, the exams for surgeons, different groups like that, because that's where I learn what's happening and I can share that information with other people that may find it relevant. For exam preparation, I've done I've done an entire video on this because I share this all the time. It's supposed to be something shameful, I think, but I think it was such, it's formed part of this experience and why I'm able to do what I do. So I accept it as a pain that has birthed a purpose. I failed my MRCS exams 5 times. I passed on the 6th attempt, and the 6th attempt is the last time you can do it successfully. So in that time, and then the second part of it is four attempts. I passed on the second attempt. And over the course of those attempts, I was building my portfolio and building my career so that I would be able to apply for surgical training. This was, so the time frame it took me to pass the exam was the time frame I imagined from Nigeria, that I would come in, finish the training, and I would be back in Nigeria. So you can see how life happens in a different way from what you expect. So for exams, in a nutshell, which is not going to be a very small nutshell, because like I said, there's a whole video on this. Preparing for exams is very, it's serious. One, particularly because of the amount of money that the exams cost. Two, because of the time value of the preparation for the exams. So if you're going to prepare for exams, thinking about how to maximize that attempt to make sure that you don't waste your money and you don't waste your time. Things to I would recommend: do not study alone. If you can, do everything you can to find study partners. If there's a course that you can attend it. If there are mocks that you can do the mocks, and take out time. So if your study leave days are not enough, take annual leave days around it, swap out your on-calls, protect a block of time where you can do devoted preparation for the exam. If you got a family, you're responsible for children, and there's a way you can be away and focus. So it's like medical school again, all you have to do is study and pass the exam. I would recommend that very strongly. And I think applying those tips, and depending on what specific area you're preparing for, I think we can be better at passing our exams, and we can change the narrative and the statistic of international medical graduates doing worse at exams than locally trained UK doctors. Because I don't think that we are less capable of passing the exams. I think we just are in a different, the things that surround us are just different, and that is what creates the challenge of passing the exams. I've mentioned that I was pregnant when I moved here. So my family has grown, and that's the next thing I'll be talking about, is setting goals for your family. We talked earlier about deciding what you want to do, and we talked about location, thinking about whether you want to be rotating through jobs, things like that. And then when you're applying for jobs, I see posts where people say things like, I applied for 40 jobs or 100 jobs. And I always think about those things, and I wonder, like, when I took on my first job, I had no idea where it was because I applied for 3 jobs. We were on strike in Nigeria. I thought, okay, let me just apply for a few interesting things. But subsequent jobs, I paid attention to location. For the training job, you get your job where you get your job. But it's useful to pay attention to things like, is there an international community in that area that you can leverage? Is there um what's the area like? Will your children be in schools where they can thrive? Will it be difficult? Cost of living? It's really important to think about these things now when we're planning jobs, because if you're in a job that is stressful and you're in a place that has a high cost of living, so you're stressed at work, you come home, you can't enjoy what you earn, it robs you of joy. Think about your visas. So we did a session as well where we talked about finances as an international medical graduate. And one of the things that happens is when we think like, oh, I'm tired of this job and I want a new job, we need to think about things like, you're going to have to apply for a visa. And if you're with your family, that might mean a lot of money. Now, if you're changing that job and you know that you're planning to apply for training within a short time, then that means the costs you can see the costs are multiplying. If you're in a job where they want to extend your visa for 6 months, then you have to think about whether it makes sense to extend your visa for 6 months, or whether you should just be getting a new job where you'll be offered a visa for 2 years. So things like that. And then if you're here, then probably you're planning to be here until you get your indefinite leave to remain. Thinking about those kinds of costs. When you get your indefinite leave to remain, within 12 months, you'll be applying for your passport. If you're applying alone or for your family, those costs can really snowball. So it's really important to be planning those things. Think about your social life. So it shouldn't be going to work and coming home and only being social online. Where are the places where you can go to have a good time? Just go out to dinner, go out for drinks. And it doesn't have to be with workmates, it can be with other people that you meet. So making an effort, go to the gym, go to dance classes, go to art classes, just do something on social media, do something around you to enjoy and thrive where you are. So it's not all about work. When I was moving, one of the things I did was look up schools in Scotland on Mumsnet. So I recommend Mumsnet a lot. I don't know, I don't think the kind of people that are there are international people, but there's no way for me to know because it's kind of like just a forum. But you can look things up there just how you look them up on Google. So you can find out areas that are nice and things like that. We've talked about social life, having fun times. Spiritual life will delve into a bit more. Planning your rota is really important, especially if you have a family. So once you get your rota, check when your children's holidays are and book your annual leave at that time so you get to spend time with them. There's nothing as annoying as working when you didn't have to be working during their annual leave, during their holidays. So early planning, one of the things that it's a culture, it's a way of life in this country is taking holidays. And if you don't ever take holidays, it will make it difficult for you to have conversations with people. So take those holidays, apply for visas, travel somewhere. It doesn't have to be anywhere outside the UK. If you're worried about absences from the UK, you can go within the UK. If you're in England, go to Scotland. If you're in Wales, go to Ireland. Just, within the country, you can move around. I'm saying this, I'm telling you the truth. I haven't done it as much, but it's really important to help you have those conversations. Or you can even, if you don't want to go on holiday, you can talk about planning them holiday, just so you can be in these conversations and you can feel more comfortable at work and foster relationships where people see you as it. The idea is to foster this sense that you're one of us and you're not an outsider or a stranger. So you do the things that are done in this culture. Okay. So we talked earlier when I said about the visa planning, about financial goals, and the big ticket expenses really are exams and visas. Those are the ones that will drain you. Those are the ones that will send your credit card bill soaring and things like that. So keep track of those and what to expect. Save. People have always told me about budgeting, but I've really honestly just tried it this year. I've kind of done the, okay, I have a rough budget in my mind behavior over the past years, but this year I've really tried like having actual numbers ascribed to things, and I found it helpful. So I would recommend that. Be careful with the credit cards. We all say that we need credit cards, which is probably true to build your credit history, but also be careful because those bills can rack up, and that's been a major stressor for a lot of IMGs, especially if you've got a family and you're paying for these visas and things are changing all the time. And there are organizations that support investing, especially for doctors. So there's a Nigerian doctor, I think he's called MoneyWise, his platform. And then there's one for just doctors in general called Medics Money. I'd recommend following these kinds of people to be aware of what happens and what advice they can give. Buying property is something that most of us aspire to, knowing when to buy. So when I was in my last job, although I was there for 3 years, when I the mortgage advisor I was working with, when he looked at my finances and I told him my plans, he was like, okay, listen, if you want to um if you know that you plan to get into training, the cost of selling a house is also significant. So I'd recommend you wait until you get into training and then you're going to be there for a long time. So thinking like that, because although it would have been, if I had the resources, then I could have bought then and then bought again, but I didn't have the resources. So it's thinking like that and planning, knowing where you are and what you want to achieve, that I think is really, really important. And we talked about jobs already, planning your jobs, knowing when to leave a job, knowing when to stay, when the right place, when the right time is, because moving is really expensive. The more you move, the more you spend. You can't recover the expense of moving. So it's important to think about those things and plan them as you're making decisions. Okay. I'm Christian, and I always happily say that I'm Christian. And my faith is really an important part of my life. One of the difficulties in the UK is that people don't really, most of the people at work will not be people of faith. And sometimes they'll tease you about your faith if they find out that you're a person of faith. Um, Lots of people who have other religions, Islam, Sheikhs, different Sikhs, sorry, different types of religions, people people talk about their religion. So during Ramadan, you'll hear people talk about like even equality and diversity, sending messages out about it's Ramadan, be kind and considerate and things like that. So it's useful to be aware that there are lots of diverse faiths. People can be sensitive about speaking about faith. People can be um, bullied based on their faith. So be mindful of your spiritual well-being. If you're someone who, because for example, the Christian faith is one where one of our jobs is to tell people about our faith. So it's very difficult when you're now in an environment where you're not allowed to talk about your faith. So if you still feel strongly about sharing your faith, it's knowing how to share your faith. So just the same way I would say, I said now that I'm Christian, that's something I would do at work. I'm Christian, I go to church, I go to church on Sunday. And, if there are any questions that come out of that, then we can take it from there. So if you want to share your faith, if you want to um, tell people more about your faith, I think a few days ago, it was Islam. There was a day of promoting Islam in the NHS, or a week or something like that. So people had like shared spaces in the NHS where they talked about their faith. So you just need to understand that you're now in a different environment. So if you're in Nigeria, the expectation is you're Christian, you're Muslim, you're traditional, and you're worshiping the way you worship, and there's no fuss about it. But here it's a bit different. You have to be careful what you say, what you don't say, or how you can be perceived. So just be aware that this is a different environment, and be aware of boundaries, limits, how far to take things, and who you're speaking with and where they are mentally. And the next part of the talk is something that is really important. And I think I don't know the words to use to express this, because I feel like this is the most painful part of being an international medical graduate in the UK, and it's the loss of joy. Most of us who are here were successful somewhere else, and we thought coming here would be something fantastic and wonderful, and would fulfill whatever purpose that it was that we made the decision to relocate for. And a lot of us, somewhere along the line, we lose our joy. And beyond joy, some of us lose our mental well being. And that's because of the pressure of the system and the way the system is set up. I always say that as international medical graduates, we always feel that we are targeted by the way people behave toward us, especially when we're new. But I've come to understand that it's just the system. I don't think it's because we're Black or we're international or we're this or we're that. I think the NHS is just set up to make people who are new feel uncomfortable. And watching people, watching the body language, even new consultants in a trust, you'll find that they walk in a different way when they start the job to the way they walk when they're 6 months down the line and more knowledgeable about the system that they find themselves in. This evening, if you only take away one thing from this conversation, I want it to be to remember to protect your joy. Don't let anyone take your joy from you, no matter what is happening, no matter how difficult the situation is. Protect your joy and protect it jealously, at whatever cost. If you need to leave that job, leave that job. If you need to take a pause, opt out of training, do it. If you need to engage a freedom to speak up guardian to talk about something that you're experiencing that is trying to rob you of your joy, then I would do it. Speak with your family, stay connected with people that love you genuinely for you, who will remind you of what your worth and your value is. I talk to people a lot now about assertiveness, because I think that's one of the reasons that people get away with treating us as international graduates poorly. It's because we are unable to speak in a way that lets people know that this is a boundary that they're crossing in the way they're speaking with us. So if someone is, I've had people shout at me like at almost every job, and learning to respond to those people. Like, I've had people speak to me in ways that I've thought, but I don't understand. Like, why would you see me and think that you can talk to me like that? And one of the things I've learned over the course of time is some of these things we invite. Number one, by our posture. So you're hunched over, you're slouching, you don't make eye contact. It's clear that you're not confident, you're not sure, or you're frustrated with your experience. I've had night shifts that at the end of the night shifts, I've just thought, do you know what? I don't need this. I don't want to do this anymore. But we need to change that. We need to, if you haven't had assertiveness training and you feel like you're always in those situations where people speak to you unpleasantly, then it's something to consider. Dealing with microaggressions, how many do you respond to? How do you interact with your colleagues? These are all things that, dealing with bullying, how do you make the bully know that I'm not going to stand for this? These are all things that we need to be thinking about in our jobs. and in how we deal. And take training, take training. There are trainings on these things, communication in medical spaces. There are assertiveness trainings. Do what you can to improve yourself in that area. Emotional intelligence is the next thing that we should talk about, because some of us don't have that, because like I said, we're now in a different environment where things work differently. The language, people are speaking English, but what they're saying, the way they're saying it, the things they're not saying. So I've said listening between the lines, because now you're not reading and you're trying to work out, is this person for me, against me? I don't understand this conversation. Are they asking me? Are they telling me? Is this, because people suggest things instead of telling you, don't you think it would be better if you did that? And then you would say no, but they're not asking you. They're actually telling you. So we need to start to have that emotional intelligence to understand the things they're not saying that are being said. Mind what you say. Some of the things that we say, we think we're joking, we think I jokingly did this, or I didn't even mean any harm. We have to be mindful. It's a different culture, so be mindful and be aware that this is a different environment and people have different expectations. My before I get into other things, I think we're coming to the end of all my talking at you for the past nearly an hour. My last thing I would like to say about gratitude, I think it's extremely important for us to be grateful for our journeys, for our experiences, how far we've come. Because if we don't recognize where we've come from, what we've achieved, what happens is that you look at people who are still on the journey and you think they can work harder, they're not doing enough. When it was me, I was doing this, that, and the other. And that's what leads to unkindness. So I think we must always be grateful first for the jobs that we have, because if you think at one point in life, this job I have now was the job I dreamt of, even though this job is frustrating me now, but at some point in life, I was praying and begging God for this job. Think about your progress, how far you've come. Think about the successes, and even the small things. When I came to this country, I remember I used to tell my brother, he's more extroverted than I am, and I'd be like, I can't be talking to everybody. Like, you talk to everybody, taxi driver, shop person, everybody wants to talk to you. I don't want to talk to them. And now I'm the one that they're even chasing. Like, I'll be gisting, like the conversations I've had with everybody. I'm just talking and I get carried away. And that for me is progress and it's success. It's something I wasn't good at that I'm now good at. So every single thing that you've done and you do, I think it's important for you to celebrate. And my very last thing before I share where you can find me and other things that I've done is a hashtag I've coined called kindness in the NHS. And I hope that one day this hashtag trends, because I think the reason why there's an attrition rate of UK trained doctors that has created um, an avenue for those of us who are internationally trained to come in and take up jobs is because there's so much unkindness in the NHS. We don't treat each other enough with dignity, with respect, with kindness. So I would encourage everyone who's here tonight to make a point of being kind, particularly to the people who are unkind and rude to you. Not for not to um not to give them the impression that you're trying to garner favor with them, but to change the narrative so that our coming into this country actually changes things, changes the status quo. We are now able to control the narrative and we are creating environments where new people feel welcomed and safe. So thank you very much for listening to me sharing my thoughts on how we can thrive in the NHS. There are various channels where you can find the contents I share. So every month I host a huddle, and that's on Zoom and on Instagram, and you can find information on about that on my Instagram page, which is at Ibifunke and Thriving in the NHS. There's a Thriving in the NHS handle. So if you check the links in that bio, which is the Linktree link I've put up, you'll find all the other things. There are products, there are things like audit template. So you've done the audits, you need to prepare the PowerPoint presentation, you don't know where to start, you're calling all your friends, you can find templates, quality improvement project templates. We've got the Thriving in the NHS book, which is behind me, and there's a journal as well. So the journal guides you through these things we've talked about, planning financial goals. We now have a 2024 calendar where you can plan 2024 and take things from there. You can catch up with the huddle on, if you miss it, it's usually back up on the replays on YouTube and the podcast as well. And then you can find other people. So we talked about country groups and things. Sorry, at this point, I'm just talking, so the slides are not making, the slides aren't matching up. Sorry about that. So you can find those things, other country groups, other organizations, you know, Facebook, you have Nigerian doctors in the UK, you have international medical graduates in the UK. If you feel like communication is a problem, there's someone that does communication. She's called Healthy English. There's TrueLink. There's so many of us that are doing different things to support. Join your country group, be aware of who they are, where they are, how they can help. And that would be me. So I'm happy to take any questions that people have now. Oh yes, there's the newsletter. Get encouragement into your inbox. Thank you everyone for being here and staying until the end.
Awesome. Thanks to you, Funke. That was awesome. I hope everyone can hear me. That was really, really awesome. Thank you so much. It was in-depth, beautiful. I think I gained more than everybody because I was listening. I was just controlling the slides. I was really enjoying it, you know, so that was good. Thank you so much. You said many things which are like wonderful. And one thing amongst many things I picked up was do not trade your joy. It is very, 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 very powerful, to be honest. It's very, very powerful because if you trade your joy, to me, that's it. You know, that's it. I do some things very profound sometimes. I just sometimes go to YouTube and get comedy and just laugh. I don't need anybody to laugh with me. Me, myself, and me. Once I laugh, we're okay. You understand? And it helps me. You know, I don't know how to explain to others, but it's me. You know, that's another way we can, you know, not trade our joy for anything. And that's the truth. Now, please, we want to open the floor to anyone and everyone who has any question. I know people are commenting. Let me start from the very, very top. There's always a genesis for everything. I think a question came in from Henry. I'll just read it out. For Northern Ireland, are there opportunities for clinical observership attachment there? Is that for you or is that for us? I don't think it's for, not sure, to be honest. Okay, let me look for another one. So somebody has said, okay, go on, Victoria.
Let me answer the question on Northern Ireland. I would just speak for myself. Like clinical attachments are possibly I guess it's possible to get anywhere. For myself, my own links are within England. So if people like Dr. Balogun has spoken in the beginning that you can reach out to us at BaloSegha@yahoo.com. I don't personally have links in Northern Ireland, but I think it is possible to still get clinical attachments there.
Beautiful. Thank you for that update, Victoria. Love you. Someone has sent in very sensible advice on pay protection, but is this widespread? My experience is that it varies from one deanery to another. Some deaneries are notorious for refusing pay protection for GP training. So he's asking, is it widespread? I don't know if you can say anything about that.
I think my answer to that would be what we've talked about, which is planning. So if you know that this DINRI is notorious for not giving pay protection, why don't use it? Find out the places where they will give you your pay protection and you'll be okay with the salary that you're earning. So, and these are the questions that we need to be asking. So now, and that's why we need these conversations. So you know that, okay, if I've worked for I think it's 3 years. If no, it's not as long as 3 years. It's a number of months, maybe something like 18 or 24 at a particular pay grade, maybe at associate specialist level, you get the pay protection. So we should ask questions before you choose the DINRI, and that's the benefit of being in communities and social groups. So you can say, listen, people, this is my plan, what is your experience? And then you get that information firsthand from people who are living in the areas you're considering, and you can make an informed choice.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for that. Awesome. Shaya has posted something. So it's always good. I think it was in course of your presentation. Always good to find out what obtains from the UK-born trainees. They know the shortcuts. That's very true, to be honest. I've had lots of things like that. Somebody has posted this. It says, that's by Anthony Mbago. It says, found this article 3 years ago, and I believe it helps to communicate, of course. I think it's attached. It's named British Slangs. That will probably help. So you can download it, and that will probably definitely help. How can we find you on social media? She says if you can just post a few things on maybe your social media handles here, that might help. So yeah. Is code switching something that is necessary to thrive in the NHS? You might also want to answer that as well.
Code switching, I don't know what that means. Sorry, I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure what the person
That's all
means.
right. It's always good to say the truth.
Okay. Yeah, I asked that question. And that kind of refers to when people talk about code switching, it means they kind of have to change their behavior in different, maybe their behavior, the way they speak in different circumstances so that they can assimilate or be integrated into that thing or that place. But then one of the disadvantages of that is that people feel that they are being inauthentic. They are not actually presenting their true selves, because when you are speaking about holiday, then some people might think, oh, okay, people like talking about pets and some people hate pets. But is that something that we need to do so that we can thrive? That's my question.
I think that's absolutely necessary. The degree to which you may need to do it might be what is then variable. But I think there's no way to progress and thrive without assimilating the culture. So for example, I don't watch TV at all most of the time. So if I'm watching TV, I'm doing it intentionally. So I cannot be discussing strictly calm dancing or love. What's that other one? Love something that that people watch at some point. The one where people come into the house like Big Brother. So I think I won't do that just so that I can have conversations. But when people are talking about it, I'm not going to then not engage because I'm not watching TV. I'll ask them questions about it. Oh, so did you like, who are you rooting for? This and that and that and that. So it may not, we don't have to be inauthentic, but we need to find a way to be able to integrate and commune with the people that we are living with so that we can make progress.
Awesome. That is wonderful. Thank you so very much. All right, just to let us know that we can search for BaloSegha on any social media handle. Like Shaya said, we're very active on social media, Instagram, and we have all those things. We have our link tree as well, and that has been posted. The links are there. That will be very helpful. Andrew has asked a question. Can you elaborate how having a credit card, borrowing in brackets, helps one to grow financially or getting more points towards ILR? If you answer that, I will also say something afterwards. Yeah.
Dr. Balogun answered in the chat already.
Oh, credit card shows your credit worthiness. I will also add this. I know it does a lot of good, but you said something while you were talking. That's why I wanted you to say, but I'll say that you need to be very careful about credit card. You need to be not just very careful, like extra, extra careful. It has done more harm than good to many people. I mean, I know people who have relocated back to Nigeria and other places, and they're still paying the debts from wherever. And I heard of a couple that they are 19 years into paying the debts. So it's very juicy, to be honest, because, you know, some people have gone that declared bankruptcy because of all this. So it's very juicy. So we need to be very, very careful. It is true that it helps, but you see, what I tell people is this: somebody who is a Briton, white Briton, you know, that's why in reverted comma, told me, look, once you have direct debits regularly and you don't falter on one, it is very high as well. The financial institutions, which I also do one or two things with them, they want you, because a credit society, they want you to latch on it so well. So they'll say, yeah, it helps. It does help, yes. But you see, direct debits is like the credit cards as well. If you have direct debit, it helps a great deal. Now, I'm not coming here to say don't get credit card, no. But in other words, use your head. Use your head, because you don't want to pay debt for God knows how many years. All right, so let's move on. So it's a credit society, definitely. Share has also answers. I'm not sure how credit card helps with ILR. That's true. Let's face it, it doesn't help. There's no point. Thank you very much for your much brave doctor. Your story is inspiring, and may your life be colorful. That's a big amen. So thank you. Okay, so they're helping you. They're congratulating you and thank you. I'm just scrolling down. So Victoria has also dropped a question. Can you please share specifically the steps you think people aiming to get into surgical training should take, as we know the terrain is now very, I'll put another word, highly competitive. Yeah. So
I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Surgical training, it depends on what you want to do. So and what stage you are in your career. So if you've got less than 18 months work experience, excluding your foundation years in surgery, in a surgical specialty, then you'll be eligible to apply for core training. If you've got over 18 months, then you'll only be eligible to apply for higher surgical training. Some of the surgical specialties don't have a split between core training and higher specialty training. So you get into them at ST1. I think the two off the top of my head are neurosurgery and cardiothoracic surgery. For the others, so urology, general surgery, plastic surgery, orthopedic surgery, the training is separated into core training and higher surgical training. To get into core training and ST1 in neurosurgery, you now need to do the MSRA exam. I don't know what the cutoff is for surgery, but then you have to have portfolios for your core training. The portfolio, it's things like audits, leadership, publications. I'm not sure the specific things for core training, but there's a portfolio. So if you plan to apply for core training, then you should be aware of what that portfolio is, because what you should be doing in the lead up to applying is preparing that portfolio to make sure that you are eligible when the time comes, so long as you're able to pass the exam and meet the cutoff. If you're going into higher surgical training, that will be ST3 applications. You should find the pressing specification for your specialty. You can get that off Oriel and look at what you've achieved and look at what you need to do. It's very competitive. So things like leadership at national and international level, management experience, publications, audits, you need to have at least 10 to be at par with your colleagues. Your number of surgeries for key things. So up to a particular level, your points increase with the number you've done of a key specialty, of a key procedure in your surgical field. And then once you get above that threshold, it starts to count against you. And then the number of years, so some of your points are divided by the number of years since you graduated from medical school. So the longer you've been out of medical school, the more challenging it can become to get into surgical training. But I got in after 13, 12, something like that years from medical school, and my points, I was still able to skill. So it's doable. You just need to be aware so that you can make sure all the other things are done, aligned properly. So that's my shortest summary of how to get into surgical training.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. That is awesome as well. I think I see Mbago Anthony's hands up. Do you have a question? Or I know you've sent a few things, but
yeah, actually, my
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so mine was a comment about code switching. I think for the people here who are on NDUK, you would be familiar with when someone types the word, oh, I saw this person and he was going all spray. So I think it's difficult to say it's necessary to thrive. And then it's also, I don't think it's a black and white thing. You can say it makes your communication better. So I've just recently qualified as a GP, and just before I finished, I did do a week-long advanced language course, which was specifically designed for GP trainees in a language school in Shrewsbury. It's a course I recommend to anyone. I mean, I didn't particularly need it because, and I'm not blowing my trumpet here, a lot of us from Nigeria have a high level of communication skills when it comes down to English. But this discussion did come up, and speaking to someone who is neutral, not someone who is medical, because I did challenge a couple of the tutors to say, how does this make you feel if it comes across like I'm trying hardest to sound like you? Now, I think it's all about being the finesse of it. I'm speaking with someone of my own experience. Back in Nigeria, I worked mainly in the north of Nigeria. I speak Hausa, and I can speak English with a Hausa accent. And sometimes there's something called mirroring, and I do this automatically. When I'm speaking to someone, say in Sokoto State, even the way I pronounce Sokoto, you would understand that that's the actual pronunciation. It's automatic. I start to sound like them. I start to switch my pronunciation of TH to Iza and Iza. So that happens, and it's a natural phenomenon. And I asked the language specialist, and they were like, "Yes, that's absolutely fine. If you're mirroring the person, as long as you're not doing it and coming across awkward, or coming across as you're trying too hard, it can help someone to get to be on the same page, get to establish a rapport better when they sort of there are similarities in the way you express yourself. Now, for instance, talking about being intentional. I love movies, but obviously in Nigeria I didn't watch a lot of British movies. But when I came here, there's this particular series in the Line of Duty, something like that. So that I would recommend that to anyone, because it's not just interesting, it's a very interesting series, but it helps you pick up the lingo, the British English, to understand. There's one specific word I picked up from there, gaffer. So when you say, oh, the gaffer is the gaffer in? I checked it up, checked the meaning, and I've used it, and it has drawn. When I say gaffer, someone turns and looks at me, oh yeah, that's like, oh, I didn't expect that from you. Do you know what I mean? So I think being intentional about it helps. As a GP, we talk a lot, we see a lot of people, and you have a really quick, short time to establish a rapport. And you don't have to sound British. That's not what I'm saying. But some of their mannerisms, some of the little things, and this would vary from place to place. In the Black country where I live, it's there are certain slangs. For instance, when I was on the medical ward, and the ward manager will come and say, "Oh, hi, Bob, are you okay, Bob?" And I was like, "Doesn't this lady know that my name is Anthony? I'm not Bob. I don't know why she's calling me Bob. Bob is my brother's name, and I never told her that." But I later found out that that's how it's just like saying, "Hi, love, you're right, love." Everyone is Bab. It's actually pronounced B-A-B, Bab. Hello, Bab. You're right, Bab. So having those sort of understanding that, and perhaps applying that in our communication to other people, especially to, patients. A lot of our colleagues, especially doctors, would be, have a higher level of education, and, they might not necessarily speak the common man's English, So I think code switching can be a plus, but you just have to be delicate about it. And that's my opinion, and having, sounded other people non-medical, they've come across to say, well, that sounds fine. That makes me, a bit more at ease, when we are sort of speaking the same language. And, also talking about learning what is common. The other day, well, not the other day, a couple of months ago, I went into my clinical supervisor's office, and one of the other partners was there, and they were talking about a certain movie. And, the good thing was that I'd watched it. It was on BBC iPlayer. So we could relate. So I and my CS had watched it to the end, and the other partner had only just started watching, and we were like, "Oh, that's very great. You remember when she did this and did that?" That has increased our rapport. So just because I watched a movie, and I wasn't watching it, I was watching at the time because I wanted to enjoy myself. But then, being intentional about going on iPlayer, watching what is British, watching, obviously look for things that are, you would enjoy. You don't have to force yourself to watch simply Strictly Come Dancing, because I'm never going to watch that. So I think
Well, I do.
in a certain light, well, that's where we differ. So I think in a certain light, that code switching can help. I mean, I sound the way I'm sounding because probably I'm used to speaking this way. If my bros they are with me now, we will begin flow the way we normally they flow. You understand? So that's just what I think. But it's about don't force it. It would come. That's what I found out. Sometimes I started to record myself. Well, I did have to record myself, for my exams. And I listened to myself, I was like, that doesn't sound like me. Why am I sounding that way? But, that's the way we communicate, and that's the best way the patients will understand us. And, whatever makes our job easy, I say go for it. That's just my 2 cents.
Awesome. I mean, that is very, very awesome. One underlining point underlining factor I'll just put there is communication skills. Very important. You really, don't necessarily have to sound British or anything. You can still have your Nigerian accent, but speak distinctively. I love that so well. Sometimes, not sometimes, most times when I talk to people, I just talk, they were like, "Am I American?" I'm like, "No, I've never been to America before." Like, "Well, you talk American." I watched movies all my life. I watched American movies all my life. Like, in Nigeria, we're more in tune to the American movies than the British, So from a young age, you just pick up the accent. It's not because you're trying to, well, for me, it's not because I was trying to impress. So when I speak, I mention, some terms, some words and terminologies like the American, like, "Are you American?" I'm like, "I've never been there," So, but basically what we're saying, and I like the way you just, broke it down, it's all about being distinctive when you're speaking. You try not to form, create a pseudo flow and everything. Sherry does put there like he doesn't code switch. And I get from his own point of view, he's a Nigerian, that is his accent. I am proud of my Nigerian accent. Now, it doesn't mean that I will now rubbish my own Nigerian accent for somebody else, or, I will be real. But when I communicate, I'll make sure that you understand what I'm saying. You know, that's just me. You know, basically, it's all about good communication. So I get that. And we all need to have a good communication skills. Victoria said, I think switching can be acceptable as long as you do not compromise your values. Exactly. We should not compromise our values. I love that so much. Nigerians are good communicators. Yeah, we talk, and especially us from the Southwest, we loud, but that's good. I like the way everything is going on. We're running up soon. We just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming. Of course, very importantly, I want to thank Funke for doing a very good job. Well done. Somebody's still posting. Okay, he's answering the question. I explained where one can enroll for that, and he's answered Sevenville Academy, Shrewsbury. That's where he did his language thing. So you can Google that. That's a very good information. Thank you, Mbago, for that. I think there are two Mbagos here.
I just want to say that the Sevenville Academy for GP trainees, it was a sponsored course. So I did the face-to-face course, which I feel is the best to do. That's the one that you can do online over a couple of weeks. But I mean, I don't think it's beneficial. Go for the face-to-face one for 5 days and you're done with it. And but I can only speak for GP trainees. I knew it was pitched to us when we were in training, and I did it and got the money back for it. So it was very good. If you're not a GP trainee, I'm not sure how that goes, but I mean, I think you can always speak to them and see if they would include you in because they do have a specialized cohort just for GP trainees. Because when they did it initially, most people that attended it were like, it wasn't helpful. Then I think they took feedback and created a special, like a higher advanced learning course for GP trainees. So perhaps if you're not a GP trainee, one way of looking at it might be to speak to them and say, can I join on this GP trainee course? And if they say that's fine, as being that you're a medical doctor, then perhaps you could speak to your educational supervisor to say, I've got this course that people have recommended, it's really great. Can I get study leave to attend that for 5 days? And can that, be put? I mean, it depends on how you sell it, because you can always sell it to say, oh, I'm new to the country, I want to understand the language, I want to improve my communication skills, blah, 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 and all of that. And then, that's one way. I've never heard of anybody doing it, but I think there's a possibility of exploring that. The costs for the face-to-face, it was £525. As a GP trainee, you get that back. You'd also get, I had to drive, so I claimed back mileage costs and all of that. They do have an accommodation which you have to pay for. I don't know the details about the cost for the accommodation, but perhaps that you'd have to agree, your supervisor would have to agree to the cost first of all. And then it helps if you're, in the West Midlands, close to Shrewsbury, then that would be also beneficial as well.
Thank you very much for that update. Appreciate that. Thank you so very much. All right, somebody, Abubakar Bello. Hi, thank you, Funke. That was inspiring. You're amazing. Keep it up. Sorry, everyone. Abubakar Yade, Arkade. Sorry, I just love to flow with almost everybody I come across. It's good to hear from you, Abubakar. Thank you. So thank you very much, Funke. Again, we cannot thank you enough. We appreciate it. That was very, very insightful, very in-depth, and thank you for sharing your personal story as well. Glad that you didn't just fall in the challenges you went through, that you stood up and that you kept moving and you're where you are today. We want to thank everybody. Mbagu, Anthony, thank you so much. Everybody that has commented, questions, posted questions, any links, very, very, very appreciative. We appreciate it. Like we said, this is the last of our quarterly program. a special program we do. We do monthly program, which is question and answer. The last one will be next month, where it's just open to anyone for 1 hour for questionings and everything. And we'll do that next month. So keep watch out for the information that will be passed across soon. Next year, by God's grace, promises to be a wonderful time. We want to we're going to be planning ahead again and letting everybody know. Again, next year we'll have our second social gathering. We did one this year, the first ever social barbecue garden and everything. We're hoping that another one will be this coming summer. So get ready for that. Well, we'll just come together and just have fun. It's not all about book. So we want to have fun and eat together, drink together, laugh together, play together, and network with one another, because you never can tell where we will meet again. So we want to thank you all, and compliments of the season we might not see until next month, which is Christmas period, but we wish you the very best. On behalf of BaloSegha, we say Merry Christmas in advance, and of course Happy New Year in advance as well. Till we meet again, thank you very much. God bless you all presenters, including Fuka. Please just wait while the rest just leave, please. Thank you very much, and bye for now. Thank you.